Good evening, and welcome to this week's Black Mental Health is Black Health. I'm Miss B, your host, and we are here today with Sue Johnson. And in just a minute, she'll get to tell you who she is, and I'll let you know we've known each other for quite a while. And it's been a great relationship. We've worked together in the trenches to make positive things happen in our community. Well, if you've never been with us before, we always start off with some deep breathing. Why? Taking deep, cleansing breaths will allow you to decompress from the day, allow you just to have that woosah moment. And you're reminded that this is something you can do anytime you feel necessary. So I'm going to count to four slowly. I'll say breathe in, and you'll breathe in slowly. I'll say breathe out, and you'll breathe out slowly to my count of four. So let's begin. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4. Out, 2, 3, 4. In, 2, 3, 4. Out, 2, 3, 4. One more. In, 2, 3, 4. Out, 2, 3, 4. I always have to get at least one in. So that was mine. So, Sue, how was that breathing for you?
It helps a lot. It's amazing how little I do it. I'm learning how much it helps. That was a great reminder of
Awesome. Awesome. Awesome.
how
Well,
healing is.
yes, it's that moment of healing. I call it that woosah moment just to say, ah. And it's something you can do when you're just a little frazzled or frustrated during the day, even just stop, take a few deep breaths. It brings, to that place of being centered. Well, our guest tonight is Sue Johnson. She is from the great island of Galveston, and we have known each other since I worked in Galveston, and it's been a long time ago. So, Sue, tell us who you are, and I would love for you to tell the audience a little something about Nia Culture Center. And this is an awesome organization. I can say I was there when it got started almost.
Yeah.
And like to think I had a little hand in that foundation, working with Sue and pushing her on. So, Sue.
Well, thank you, Bronwyn. I really appreciate you asking me on to your program. Near Cultural Center. I'm here. I'm from Galveston, as she's already said, but I'm from a little small island where there was, of course, lots of oppression. I'm still in Texas, and I grew up feeling not desirable, not attractive, not valuable because of the color of my skin, texture of my hair, and just the fact that I was black. I thought God just favored us. So over the years, I read a lot about our history and culture. Growing up, my dad was almost Muslim, so I read a lot of self-help stuff. But after all the encounters of segregated schools, which I don't have a problem with segregated schools as long as there are equal accommodations. But I grew up not feeling good about myself. And I started reading slave narratives as a young child and finally realized, something is wrong. Uh, and I ended up founding this organization about almost 32 years ago, to initially try to build the self-esteem of my community. Once I was able to do it for myself, I wanted to share with my community. It was organizations and people like Bronwyn and her sister Sonia, and Three Sisters in the Spirit, and other organizations throughout Houston who began to frame things in Black and proud and wonderful ways, and indulging in African American history myself. I was able to lift my own self-esteem, my knowledge base of who we are as people, and begin to start working with and involving myself with people who did the same thing. So I wanted that for my community. I got most of that nourishment, cultural nourishment from the Houston, but I was able to bring it home by collaborating and partnering with others of like minds. And we started addressing the problem of youth violence here. Our kids were killing each other wholesale. We wanted to have to change the perception of who our children were, who our community was. And so we started rites of passage programs for girls and then for families. And all of our programs were focused on just helping to improve life for each other, improve the respect we have for ourselves and each other.
Awesome. It is, like I said, awesome program that she has. Well, I invited Sue here tonight. Every year, rather, around Martin Luther King's birthday, I do want to do something to commemorate him. I do not want to do the I Have a Dream speech. We hear that, and that is his least confrontational speech, probably why it's his most famous. That's just my bias. But he said he had so much to say that was so rich. And the thing about it, when you look at him, man, some of the stuff he said, 60 years ago, 50 years ago is still true. That's the sad part about it, that not enough has changed, that the things he's saying, it's like, really? That didn't come out of the headlines. That's not in response to something that happened recently. So I pulled a few quotes, and Sue and I are just going to give our thoughts on it. I'll start with one, and then I'll let Sue, we'll talk about it for a second or two, and then we'll do another. We'll try to get through 3 or 4 quotes just to get you to understand, one, the depth of Martin Luther King, because it is so much deeper than I Have a Dream. We tend to dilute his memory, dilute his legacy, and we want to enhance it. And 2, to see that, wow, we still have work to do. So I'm going to start with a quote from his speech he did, The Other America. And in this speech, he talks about there are 2 Americas. We live in one and other people live in another. And this is just a quote from that. It may be true that morality cannot be legislated, but behavior can be regulated. It may be true that law cannot change the heart, but it can restrain the heartless. It may be true that the law can't make a man love me, but it can restrain him from lynching me. And I think that's pretty important also. When we think about today, there is still the modern day lynching. And we look at laws being rolled back and laws changing that were put in place during this time. And I think it's important that we understand that as civil rights legislation is rolling back, do we want to go back to a time where lynching was okay? It was the law of the land. Well, we can, some people say that'll never happen, but we look at what's eroding. I don't know. What do you think, Sue?
I think that lots of has eroded. I don't think that is also necessarily that things have changed. People want to say, I was at a program today saying things have changed, but you cannot legislate people's hearts.
Mm-hmm.
You just can't. I think there's lots that needs to be done in the way of helping us to understand exactly that fact, so that we don't wait on others to do for us what we can do for ourselves.
I agree. And I think we have to know that it is something we have to do. We can't just sit back. Oh yeah. No, there are things we have to do. Like I said, we're just going to go through a few quotes, and the show now is back to 30 minutes for now. So we're going to go through a few more quotes. Sue, what is a quote that you would like to elaborate on?
This one, I think, was from a public address that Dr. King made to the 10th anniversary convention of the SCLC in Atlanta back in 1967. And it says, as long as the mind is enslaved, the body can never be free. Psychological freedom, a firm sense of self-esteem, is the most powerful weapon against the long night of physical slavery. No Lincolnian Emancipation Proclamation or Johnsonian Civil Rights Bill can totally bring this kind of freedom. The Negro will only be free when he reaches down in the inner depths of his own being and signs with the pen and ink of assertive manhood his own Emancipation Proclamation. And with a spirit straining toward true self esteem, the Negro must boldly throw off the manacles of self abnegation and say to himself and to the world, I am somebody. I am a person. I am a man with dignity and honor. I have a rich and noble history. How painful and exploited that history has been. Yes, I was a slave through my foreparents, and I'm not ashamed of that. I'm ashamed of the people who were so sinful to make me a slave. Yes, we must stand up and say, I'm Black and I'm beautiful.
Ooh, that's a lot in that quote. Come on, break it
Uh,
down a little bit. That's a lot.
if I'd heard any of that when I was 8, 10 years old, when I was doubting my own self-worth, it would have taken me many places. I would have reached, I think, where I am now a lot sooner in terms of self-love and self-esteem. And it's one of those things where I work in our own community to try to build our capacity to fight injustice as a community, that we all feel, we all see, we all understand what it means and what it means to us. But we're, in my mind, still have that sense of unconscious inferiority. So I think that as a community, we have to build our esteem and understand where that self-hatred comes from. To think that there are things that are here right now that are available to us because people like me have gone through this and studied in scholarly ways and experientially understand that we have some deep healing to do. So organizations that like the I think it's a Association of Black Psychologists and other mental health institutions have come together and pulled curriculums and programs and processes for us to get to that inner self, that we understand that self-hatred a little better, and introduce ourselves to mental health in a way that is acceptable, that it is okay to understand that mental health needs to be attended to as much as we attend to our physical health.
You know, I always say being Black in America is a mental health issue all its own. And like you say, because your self-esteem can be so damaged by what we see, and it really hasn't changed. It's one of those things we have to work on. When I think about the last part of this quote, it says, yes, I was a slave through my foreparents, and I'm not ashamed of that. I am ashamed of people who were so sinful to make me a slave. Yes, I must stand up and say, I'm Black and I'm beautiful. And that was written in 1967, but it's something we still need to say today.
Yes.
It's something we need to ingrain in our children today. And that's why, really, when I'm doing this, it's like, man, what can we learn? We need to still say the same thing today. We need to still tell our children this today, that this is a truth that needs to live within them. Yes, these are things that happen. I think especially now in Texas, with the book bans and we can't talk about really just history. They call it critical race theory, but that is not critical race theory. It's just history, and we don't want to talk about it because it'll make someone feel bad. We are not teaching history, so we as a community have to teach our children and build pride in it, because that quote, he says, yes, I was a slave through my foreparents, and I'm not ashamed of that. And understanding that is not our shame to carry. So I think
it is definitely something to to pay attention to and to address, because I've had uh, old people, old and young people, uh, suppress the truth of our existence. If we frame things in black, we're concerned that someone else may get alarmed by that, and they then feel unsafe being around people like me because I head on address. Look, we have a issue with discipline in our schools. Our kids are thrown out 3 to 6 times more than everybody else's kid. And why we need, and why do you got to say black kids? Why can't we say all kids? Because it's not happening to all kids. And if your mind is free and you have the will to address the injustice, and you're willing to use tools available, we can fight this thing. We have before, and it's not an end to this fight. We have to teach the next generation how to address, when we make gains, how to maintain those gains and sustain those gains. And it really starts a lot with self-love. You got to love yourself enough and appreciate yourself enough to understand that you're worth the fight, and the generations to come depend on you to engage in that fight.
And to that end, we have to fight the apathy of just saying, okay, who is too hard? There's so much going on. I just don't have time. I can't do it. That part of the apathy. And he had something to say about apathy as well. And that, he says, it may well be that we will have to repent from this in this generation, not merely for the vitriolic words and the violent actions of the bad people, but for the appalling silence and indifference of the good people who sit around and say, wait on time. There comes a time when one must take a position that is neither safe nor political nor popular, but he must take it because conscience tells him it is right. Listen up, stand up, move up, open your eyes, do something, make a mark on the world to help stop the madness. Don't stand there, sit there, and turn when you see injustice. And when you were saying that, that's that whole apathetic mindset of, no, we're just gonna wait. What are we waiting for? We do have to listen up, stand up, move up, open our eyes, do something. And I do believe in, if I can make a difference where I am in my little bitty world, my community, then it can have a ripple effect, because if I impact just 10 people in my community, they're going out, and if they impact just 10 more, it's going to grow exponentially. So when it comes to just making a difference in our community, educating our children, making it known what's going in our school systems, so that others who don't know can know, and then say, oh, we've got to change. So I think we have to fight that apathy. What would you say to that?
I think it's also the fight against apathy is a group thing. It's just like the answer is a group thing. Everything you just described is something that affects us all as a group. And so we have to keep our connection to the group. Martin didn't march and die and suffer, and all those people went to jail and got it. For us to get an Ivy League education, get a nice house, move to the suburbs, and say we've made it, we're all right. And as long as I'm okay, we're okay. You know what I mean? So that's got to change. That's got to be addressed. I think, it's more than an individual thing. And until we find ways of working effectively together as groups, it does start with the individual. You yourself have to. But we do need to find opportunities to work with others to make things happen, because the problems are so massive that there needs to be unity of purpose as it relates to this.
I totally agree. It reminds me of the part of the mantra of Shape Community Center. I am because we are.
We are.
And when we embrace that, How can I be apathetic? Because it's not just me. I've got to make a difference for you, for your children, for your grandchildren. So I can't waste time saying I'm going to wait, because there is no time to wait. So yes, as a people, I think we all have to figure out, like you say, it's a group. What can we do? What do we need to change in our community? What is going on that we collectively see? And who is that we? That we can be whoever you find you need to work with in your community. Groups like Mia Culture Center. If nothing exists, you create it. If there's that, well, I don't see anybody doing it, and you feel it's something that needs to be done, go do it. But there are people doing great things that we just don't know about. Get out there, read about it. In the land of Google, you can find what's going on. Google it, as they say. But yeah, we have to stop the apathy. The apathy is part of the madness. It's got to go. So yeah, let's stop the apathy.
I absolutely agree. Yes.
And it's a we. You're right. It's a we. We have to do that. We say we're just going to hit a few. You have another one you would like to address?
Well, I didn't think I'd get that much time, but I guess this is one. Hatred paralyzes life. Love releases it. Hatred confuses life. Love harmonizes it. Hatred darkens life. Love illuminates it. We talked a lot about the violence, the violence amongst ourselves, and the hatreds we've developed among ourselves that prohibit us from moving forward together, and it maims us in so many ways. The harmony that Dr. King speaks about is one of those things I absolutely dream for and work for, and try to find ways to find it in my little circles, because it is essential for love. I mean, love is so many different things to so many different people. Mm-hmm. But when you find it, you do find yourself in at least an attempt to be in harmony with each other, right? And it cannot exist. Love cannot exist unless the truth, the truth, really. It's better. It becomes real when you're honest and open and you see the light.
I like that. When we think about just that whole idea of hatred that runs rampant in our country, and it's interesting, that statement was from a book of sermons called, from this one of his sermons, and the sermon was The Strength of Love. That was written in 1963. Hate still paralyzes us. Love still can release us. Hate does confuse life, because if we look at the general feel of our country in the last couple of years, hate is running rampant. And it does have a confusing feel. There's nothing comfortable or warming about being in an environment where there's hate. So yes, it does continue to confuse. Love can harmonize. And like you say, you're looking for that harmony. And when we think of harmony, we think of things fitting together. When I think of being a musician, when I think of harmony, I think of music. When you think of the chord that fits together. And when something is harmonized in music, it just fits, it works. When people are in harmony, they're in unison, it just fits. And wouldn't it be amazing to live in a world where people were in harmony? Because not just in America, our world is not in harmony right now. And wouldn't it be amazing? I honestly, this is a pessimistic side. I am a glass half full person. But the other part of me, that other half part of the glass, says I can't even imagine a world in harmony. And that is sad. But I'm being true. It's hard for me to imagine what that would look like. I think it would be beautiful. It's just hard to see it and imagine it and grasp it. But I do think as we work to move toward love, that would be an amazing thing. As I said at the top of the hour, we're going back to a 30-minute format for now, and we'd only do a few quotes. I'm looking at the clock. I want to end tonight doing something a little different. And Sue knows this part of me, and many of you in the audience don't. I used to be a storyteller. And Sue's heard many of my stories over the years. But I'm going back to that part of my life because it's a way to entertain, a way to teach, just a way to learn and enjoy. So I want to end with a very short story. I'm going to abbreviate it. And I know Sue's heard different iterations of this, and many of you have heard different iterations of this story before. But I'm going to tell it and relate it to our topic. So you see, there was this little chicken. This chicken lived his wonderful chicken life, and he was happy. Now, even as a baby, he knew he was different. And yeah, there was one more like him. They were just different. Even when they were in the egg, they were different. This hen said, I don't know where these 2 eggs came from. Let me just sit on them. They sure are big. They were uncomfortable for mother hen to even sit on. But she did it because that was, she was a mother. That was her job. When they hatched, they looked different. They didn't look like your regular chicken. As they grew bigger, bolder, looking stronger than any chicken in the yard. Well, one day, this beautiful eagle flies down and says to one of them, why are you here? What do you mean why I'm here? I'm here with the chickens. I'm here where I belong. You're not a chicken? They told me I was a chicken. From the time I was born, they told me you're a chicken, so I'm a chicken. So he said, look at you and look at them. Yeah, I look kind of different. I'm just a different kind of chicken. Now look at you and look at me. I look like you. What are you? I'm an eagle, and so are you. What's an eagle? Well, there's nothing wrong with being a chicken if that's who God made you to be. But if he made you to be an eagle, you can't be a chicken. It's time for you to go and soar. So he went and told his friend, and his friend said, we chickens. Somebody's trying to dupe you. We chickens. We're not moving. We're not moving. We're not moving. He said, well, I'm going. Because look at him and look at them. I think there's something better for us. So with that, eagle told him, come on, I'm going to teach you how to fly. And short version, he just taught him and he began to soar. And he soared. He realized his own greatness. But he didn't want to stop there. He went back for his friend and said, look at what I can do. I don't want to leave you behind. But he wouldn't go. And he kept going. But he had to find his own identity and be that eagle. So why do I tell you that story as we're talking about Martin Luther King Jr.? There are so many lessons for me real quick. One, we have to find out who we are. Don't let anybody define you. You define who you are, who your people are. You're not the chicken. You're the eagle. There's nothing wrong with being that chicken, but if that's not who you were meant to be, if you're meant to soar, get out there and soar. Two, when you find your ability to soar, it's not just for you. Get out there and you pull those others up. He kept going back for that other eagle and kept going back and finally wore him down. And when that eagle began to soar on his own, he was so thankful. So you don't find your own greatness just for you. Each one, reach one, each one, teach one is true. Go back and find it. And lastly, just soar, soar, soar. You have the ability inside you to soar above all and to find your true greatness. So as we end tonight, my call to action for you is to find the eagle within you and soar. And I always like to remind you to vote, vote, vote. It is an election year, and Martin Luther King and many others died, were beaten for our right to vote. And that doesn't inspire a lot of people. But look at what's going on and think about the quotes we gave you tonight and how true they still ring, which means that the battle is still there. We've got to fight on. And part of that fighting is voting. Sue, would you like to have a final comment?
I'd just like to say that since we're fresh off the Martin Luther King holiday and we've gotten all this new inspiration, be thoughtful and intentional this year about living a life of service and combating apathy, increasing love, and togetherness of purpose and in this new year. And you can do some of that if you come to Galveston. You can come down to the Neocultural Center's Juneteenth Legacy headquarters and see our art gallery that will inspire you and tell the story of Martin and others. So please come by.
And it's on the Strand if any of you get to make it to Galveston. It is amazing. It is amazing. You got to go see it. So thank you again, Sue, and thank you, audience. I'm Miss B, the transformational therapist, and I'm here to help you become a better you. See you next week where we'll have another topic that hopefully inspires you. Bye now.
Goodbye.